for all, 24/7 was perhaps the slogan of the government, but while that slogan is getting fructified, on the other hand, it's also the sector with the largest number of NPAs, either because of unviable PPAs signed at unviably high coal block costs or non-existent PPAs at in the last 2 years. Power producers and their lenders have been caught in between a rock and a hard place. Our correspondent Kevin Lee caught up with Anil Sardana, Managing Director and CEO of Tata Power, began by asking him if he thinks the linkage policy will be better than the allocation of coal blocks. From a corporate perspective, the power sector.
Allocation of coal blocks was one aspect of reforms after Supreme Court cancelled the coal blocks. But the way the bids were received, that seems to be a non-starter. There's another aspect where there are a lot of projects which have PPA or have already gone ahead and built those projects. They have no coal allocation. So for them, coal linkage policy was required and desirable. I guess the two have their own requirement, and therefore the two have to go concurrently.
The government has been speaking to lenders to reduce stress in the thermal power side. We're also hearing reports that stress will be reduced in hydro projects as well. Do you think there are other pain points that the government needs to focus on, or are these two the main pain points?
Well, standard assets is not a simple issue. Such of the people who have built, they fall under different category. Some of them don't have equity to complete the project and they have had cost overruns. Now the lenders are not willing to fund the balance part of the cost and they don't have equity to arrange. The government has to step in, either get those equity investors move out and somebody else takes over. Those are steps that will have to be taken as a tailor-made step for each asset. There cannot be one solution that fits all because each of those stranded assets have got a very distinct issues at hand. So like the way we heard in the road sector, I guess it has to be done similarly for the power sector also.
So we had spoken to you just a month back where you said that it's difficult for consolidation to happen because banks have to be willing to take a haircut. Do you think this is something that the government should bring to lenders' notice because it is in talks with lenders?
Some of the developments that we saw happening in the banking sector, particularly some of the senior officials having been booked for what they did perhaps many years back, has seen bankers actually withdraw from active proposals that were being negotiated. It's a challenge. I think the government, which has now empowered RBI to intervene and see that some of those decisions with regard to lenders ultimately deciding matters, is something that has to happen on ground. Then we will get to know that people and the lenders are actually willing to resolve those issues. Today it's a big challenge because the projects are just standstill. And the sad part is the assets are all now rusting. There is no preservation done for assets which were built many, many years back. So even if someone goes today to retrieve those assets, it's going to be a challenge. From sector point of view, we'll be very keen that something like 90 gigawatt, which is still not on bar, needs to be brought back on bar.
I'm glad you brought up legacy issues, so I want to talk to you about that in the context of solar power. Now, you yourself big into renewables, you've seen a doubling of revenue from the renewables space, and solar tariffs are at an all-time low. Do you think this is viable, or is it just that companies are being over-aggressive with their bids because they're keen to win projects? Are we heading down that same problem that we saw with thermal power, where companies are being over-aggressive with their bids, and this could lead to long-term problems for the sector?
Well, that's the kind of feeling everyone has today. Yes, we have seen over-aggression from some of the bidders, but at the same time, I'm sure they have strategy up their sleeve in terms of how they want to make it viable. I don't want to prejudge on their behalf whether sustainable or not. But at the same time, I guess learning from what we saw in coal blocks, learning from what we have been seeing in some of the renewables, it will be desirable that people show restraint and bid properly so that the projects are viable and sustainable. But it's a good news from customers' point of view and from Discom's point of view. If the tariffs go down, it's great news from customers' point of view. So we welcome it.
All right. I think that's